Thank you for joining me for this special segment of the Play Big Movement podcast. Each week I release a full-length interview, but this part of the interview is not released to the public. This segment is available exclusively for you as a member of the Play Big Movement right here. To hear the full-length interview, please visit sharonlechter.com/podcast. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to this segment, the private Facebook segment of the Play Big Movement podcast with Sharon Lechter. And if you have not listened to the original podcast with René, make sure you go back and do that, because we talk about being a successful woman in a man's world. And certainly we've known each other for several years, having met through Lisa Copeland. And I think it's just been, we talk about the importance of having other women to support you and be there to support from a peer perspective, but also really just from a friendship perspective. So René Banglesdorf, thank you for hanging in there for the Play Big Movement private Facebook group.
Sharon, I am so thrilled to be here. And you said we were going to get personal. So I'm a little nervous. If I know that I'm like shrinking a question.
Well, I think it's all, in this segment, I like to talk about, maybe some of those oops or those down times and how you got back up. And then also any habits, private habits that you have, daily habits related to that you can, and you just talked about your 100 days of prayer. So obviously that's one, but other things that you do on a consistent basis that people can maybe learn from and adopt and say, oh, maybe I should try to do that. So that's really when we talk personal side. So you can share anything you choose to, and that's fine. But you made a comment in the main podcast at one point where you said there is always, there's been ups and downs. And I would imagine, given the fact that your transactions are pretty large dollar amounts, you may very well have some dry periods. So talk about some of those, how you got through some rough times.
Well, I think one of the biggest times of growth in my career was when the Circuit of the Americas brought the Formula One race to the United States. So it had been gone from the US for a while, and they brought it back, and I jumped through all sorts of hoops to become the official helicopter charter provider for this race. And the roads were a mess, so we were predicting it to be horrible. And I probably had 800 clients, all VIPs, some like insanely important VIPs like Mario Andretti, who is going to be the master of ceremonies for the race. I mean, everyone's heard of him. Everyone knows who he is. And so having that level of security, we transported the governor and the lieutenant governor, and the lieutenant governor at the time had a wheelchair. So we had some accommodations with that and security, and just, there were a lot of moving pieces. And Sharon, it was in one way a huge success in that there were no incidents, and in another way, a huge failure, because it was a terrible customer service experience for a lot of people. And I lost money. And it was a terrible customer service experience because, number one, I didn't know what I didn't know. And number two, the track breached contract with me. And so I had to cover for that. I had to apologize for that. I had to make sure people didn't miss flights. And we had to do a lot of adaptation on the ground. And, I say this in my book because my publisher told me that I needed to do it. But after that was over, it ended on the Sunday before Thanksgiving. I put my pajamas on and crawled in bed, and I did not get out of bed until Wednesday night because I had to go buy a turkey so that my family could have Thanksgiving. But it was just one of those, I felt so unbelievably defeated that I couldn't pull myself out of bed for a few days. And, I decided after that incident that I was going to learn from that, and I was going to grow, and I was going to take the nuggets that I've learned from that and apply them to other things so that it wasn't a waste. And so I think being able to look back at that and talk about what I did wrong was maybe getting in over my head, and what other people did wrong, and just doing that after action review, which is a military practice, is really, really valuable. And that's something that I do regularly now. I didn't even know what it was then, but I did really do it. Like
well, obviously there were tremendous logistics. And as you said, sometimes we don't know what we don't know. And
right.
That's a huge initiative that has nothing but timetables attached to it, right?
Yeah. So that one really shaped me. I mean, failing that publicly has shaped me into a much more confident person now, because I'm like, well, shoot, I didn't kill anybody in that. I could do all sorts of things now. And I really did learn a lot from it.
Well, I love, because you start off by saying learning opportunity. I say there are no failures, just learning opportunities. I think we were pretty instrumental when they had so much devastation in Texas. Was it last year or the year before, with all the airlift relief down there? Weren't you kind of instrumental in putting that together?
2 years ago, when Hurricane Harvey hit. So all of my logistics experience from that came into play when we had, I want to say, like 180 flights and 200,000 pounds of donated supplies. So able to get donated supplies, able to get 70 different airplanes that the pilots were volunteering to fly, and going into areas where there was an airport on high ground, but there was flooding all around. And Orange, Texas, which is east of Beaumont, was one of those areas where we were flying planes in with insulin, with formula for babies, with water, with food, and able to offload that from airplanes into high water dump trucks in conjunction with the National Guard. And they were driving them through the streets and handing medication and water up to second story windows so that people could live. And I love, Sharon, what the state rep said, Dade Phelan said about the work that we did at that time. And there were hundreds of volunteers. This was not just my effort, but he said that there were unused body bags in Orange County because of how quickly we could get supplies into them. And that's one of those things that is really heartwarming to me, that I really was able, with dozens and dozens of other people and the generosity of a lot of people in our community, to help save lives.
Well, they talk about out of every disaster or mistake comes a seed of an equal or greater benefit. And I just wanted to highlight that you definitely made an impact in a very positive way into thousands of people's lives in doing that, because you were instantly on it. I mean, I remember here in Arizona, I only helped a little bit by sending a check, but supportive of all that you were doing. And I know there were thousands of people impacted in a positive way. So again, every one of us, we have failures we face, and then the issue, do you turn that into something that you can make better later and turn it into a learning opportunity? So hopefully you don't repeat the same issues. So tell us a little bit about your daily habits. We have your 100-day prayer program that's on in the morning. It's 7 a.m., I think you said Central.
7 Central. Yep, that'd be 5 for you Pacific.
Yes. I won't be watching it too often, Renee. 5 a.m.
You can watch the replays.
But I did watch some replays. So yes, I'm doing it. Just
well, great.
7 o'clock my time. How's that?
Perfect. Well, I have a pretty structured routine. I journal every morning right when I get up, and I use Michael Hyatt's materials. He has a full focus journal and a full focus planner. And I use both of those pretty religiously. So the journal, I get up in the morning and I love the questions in it. And if you don't mind, I'll share those, because I think it's important to think about these things. So the first question is, what happened yesterday? The second one is, what were your big wins? So really, what'd you do? And then what was positive? And then what were your lessons learned? And then this is my favorite part. It talks about what you're thankful for. So I every day come up with 3 or 4 different things that I'm thankful for. And it puts me really in a much more positive state of mind starting my day than I used to be in. It asks how I'm feeling. Sometimes I answer that one, sometimes I don't. And then it talks about what I read or heard and what stood out, and then what my plans are for the day. So I start every day with that, and usually 3 cups of coffee. And then I have a planner where I come up with my big 3 important things that I need to get done today. And those relate back to my quarterly goals and annual goals, so that I'm making some progress on
every single day. Yep. That's
every
great.
day. A little bit every day.
I would adjust the big win. I always say, what were your little wins? Because when you can accomplish something, even when it's small, it helps build that self-confidence and helps keep you going. So that's great.
Well, no, and I'm usually really thankful for those little wins, especially on hard days. Makes you think about what did go. What was one thing that was positive that I took away from yesterday? Because you can always find something. Like, I ate a healthy lunch. I drank all the water that I should have. I got to bed on time. I took a nap, whatever it was. It's good to reflect on those things that are positive in your life.
Particularly when you're kind of a type A personality, because most of us, we don't see what's right in the picture. We see what's wrong. We're kind of a perfectionist. And that's something that I've dealt with, all my life. Instead of saying what's right, I always say what's not quite good enough, what's not perfect, and you have to really start recognizing the good things so that you can start focusing on feeling better about all the little wins. We call it the little wins here. So.
Right. Well, it's really important to look at the gain more than you look at the gap. So if your goal was to sell $1 million, to have $1 million in sales last month, and you had 950,000, then you can look at, man, I missed my goal. Or you can look at, I got 95% of the way to a really big, audacious goal that I set for myself last month. So you have to look at the gain, and then first, and then analyze the gap. So what can I do next month to get that?
I love that analogy. Recognize the gain, not the gap. I think that's a wonderful way because that's when you're playing big. You've got to, really take time to celebrate and acknowledge what you have accomplished instead of spending time fretting over what hasn't been done. So I think that's fantastic. And René, once again, remind people how they can find you.
Well, I am on Facebook. I'm sure I'm tagged here in this, so you can find me there. At René Banglesdorf is my handle: Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And then my website is renebanglesdorf.com. If you're ready to buy a plane, you can go to charliebravoaviation.com, and it'll route you to our website.
I think everybody, that's on their want list. So yeah, we'll be talking about that. So thank you so much, René. And for all of you, playing big is exactly that. Recognize your gain, not your gap, and know that to play big, it's really, being number one in your field, living your legacy, and creating maximum impact. And certainly, René, you have continued to do that, and being a leading woman in your field, a male-dominated field, plus now reaching out and sharing your expertise in your new book, Stand Up. So if you haven't got it, get her book, Stand Up. And it's time for you to play big in your own world. So love you all. Thank you so much.